Hi there, my English learners. Today, we're going to learn some new vocabulary with unsolicited advice. I hope you enjoy this lesson. Let's do this.
Machiavelli thinks that if people identify with their state, they will fight harder, work harder, and fiercely defend the country against foes.
The first word of the lesson is foe. Foe means enemy. It is a noun. It's a countable noun, so you can use it in the singular, foe, or in the plural, foes. Foes. It typically shows up in formal writing or formal spoken language to defend the country against foes, against enemies.
Because in each case, they're not just fighting or working for some nebulous king or far-off set of nobles.
The next word of the lesson is nebulous. Something which is nebulous is unclear, but when he uses the word nebulous, which is an adjective to describe a king, he's talking about a king whose identity, whose goals, maybe their intentions are unclear. So as I said, nebulous is a word that we typically use to describe an idea which is vague and you don't know exactly what that particular idea aims to achieve, but you can sometimes use it to describe a person whose goals are also quite unclear. So let's pronounce it together, nebulous. Nebulous, with stress on the first part, nebulous.
But for their own freedom. He suggests this is one reason why the Roman Republic was so militarily successful. So we see that Machiavelli's arguments for republicanism are still eminently practical. It is not that he thinks it is inherently good for people to participate.
A couple good words there, eminently practical. Eminently, incredibly, remarkably. You could use the adjective eminent to talk about someone who is outstanding. For instance, an eminent professor. But you could use the adverb as well, eminently practical, to talk about something which is practical in a remarkable way, in a way that stands out, in a way that is impressive. Let's pronounce it together, eminently.
Really successful. So we see that Machiavelli's arguments for republicanism are still eminently practical. It is not that he thinks it is inherently good for people to participate in government. If it was shown that monarchies are more effective after all and make better decisions, I'm sure he would change his mind. But he thinks that republics truly are the best form of state simply based on the results they can achieve and the internal security they can generate. And speaking of security, violence is absolutely crucial to understanding Machiavelli and his ideas. So I think it is high time we take a look at it.
Let's talk about this grammatical structure. When you say it's high time, then the verb that shows up in that sentence should be in the simple past form. This is the more accurate structure of that sentence. For instance, it's high time I did something. It means that there is an urgency for this action to be taken. So he has a grammatical slip, and it's acceptable for you to use the sort of incorrect grammar in spoken language. But if you were writing something up, then you want to use it in the more precise structure. It's high time subject plus the simple past. Let's go back.
Violence is absolutely crucial to understanding Machiavelli and his ideas. So I think it is high time we take a look at it.
So the more grammatically accurate phrase would be, it's high time we took a look at it.
6. The need to be dangerous. A phrase I sometimes see battered around the internet is, it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It is intermittently attributed to Bruce Lee, the 17th century.
When something happens intermittently, it's not continuous. It comes and goes. So sometimes people attribute this quote to that particular person. Sometimes they don't. So it's not consistent. It's not continuous. Intermittent. And when you use it as the adverb, it's intermittently. So intermittent is the adjective and intermittently is the adverb. Let's go back and hear it again.
Battered around the internet is, it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. It is intermittently attributed to Bruce Lee, the 17th century Japanese swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, and just an old proverb, sometimes said to be from China and sometimes Japan. I know this is a side tangent, but I spent so long trying to track down the origin of this quote.
We use the word tangent to talk about a particular topic which is not directly related to what we're focusing on. In mathematics, we also have the concept of a tangent. And this is, if you recall from your high school days, there is a straight line that touches a curve in a particular way. And this is the slope of that line. And we call this the tangent. So in everyday language, when you go off on a tangent, you switch to a topic that may not be 100% related to what you're covering.
And I just can't find a definitive answer anywhere. But wherever this little aphorism comes from, its message is pretty clear. It is much better to be
An aphorism is an idea which is held by a lot of people. It's kind of like a proverb. So let's pronounce it together as a good word, aphorism. Aphorism. Put the stress on the first part. Let's go back and hear it.
And I just can't find a definitive answer anywhere. But wherever this little aphorism comes from, its message is pretty clear. It is much better to be prepared for conflict and disorder, and for this to have turned out to be unnecessary, than to be unprepared, only for violence to then come knocking at your door. There is almost certainly something in this, but Machiavelli actually goes one step further. He thinks it is the duty of every state to be constantly ready for violence, since this not only means they will come out on top if war does break out, but also they are less likely to have to fight in the first place if they seem sufficiently dangerous. This has given Machiavelli something of a warmongering reputation.
A warmonger is a person who is always looking for conflict. You also can use the word monger with the noun fear. For instance, fear-mongering. And this is a person who tries to instill fear in other people. So we have warmongering and we have fear-mongering. Pay attention to the pronunciation of this word, monger. And in the continuous form, mongering. So let's go back and hear it again.
They are less likely to have to fight in the first place if they seem sufficiently dangerous. This has given Machiavelli something of a warmongering reputation, but I think things are far more complex than they first appear. Even those leaders Machiavelli does praise for their skills in other areas, such as Numa, who he says is a gifted administrator and cultural leader, he still criticizes for their lack of skill in combat. He even says that if Numa himself had not been succeeded by Pompilius, who was another warlike ruler, just like Romulus, then Rome would have probably fallen. On the other hand, if a leader is sufficiently skilled in battle, then Machiavelli thinks this can make up for a lot of other failings. For example, while Machiavelli condemns the ancient king of Syracuse, Agathocles, for being a criminal, a tyrant, and a brutal murderer,
let's talk about the word tyrant. A tyrant is a person who oppresses other people, usually someone with a lot of power. For example, a dictator can be described as a tyrant. In the noun form, which is associated with that action, is tyranny. The verb is to tyrannize. So we have the person, a tyrant. Tyranny is the state of oppressing other people to suppress dissent and disagreement. And then we have the word tyrannize, which is a verb, and we must use it with an object. So, for instance, to tyrannize someone, or you can say that a group of people are tyrannized. So that would be the passive structure.
Failings. For example, while Machiavelli condemns the ancient king of Syracuse, Agathocles, for being a criminal, a tyrant, and a brutal murderer, he states that none of this caused a fall from power, since he was such a skilled military commander and even managed to win a number of victories against Carthage, which was a much larger state than Syracuse. Although Machiavelli says he's not to be admired, he also thinks you just can't argue with results. It goes to show just how important being a dangerous military leader is, that it could make up for all of these other shortcomings. He also praises these small German states who
A shortcoming is a fault, is something that you lack. So it's kind of like a deficiency. You can say that he has a few shortcomings, meaning that he has a few vices, a few weaknesses, a few things that he fails to do properly. It's a good word, shortcoming.
Managed to maintain their independence in the face of much greater forces by ensuring that their towns are well fortified and that their armies...
The towns are well fortified. Fortify means to make something stronger. For example, you want to make your town very strong by perhaps building a wall around it, right? This is what people did in the past. This is to fortify, to strengthen your town. Fortify is a verb, and its noun form is fortification. Anyways, that's the end of today's lesson. If you like my channel, don't forget to like this video, comment, and recommend it to other people. Thanks for watching, guys.